Trump, the March to the White House. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. Years ago, I identified that Donald Trump is a narcissist. I did so by reference to the evidence. He's a clear example of one. There are some people who are hard of understanding who don't accept that, but what they forget is that it is simply an analysis of his behaviours. Whether you like Donald Trump or dislike him is a matter for you. I simply have analysed him. His behaviours support that, and I need not go into why he is a narcissist again. Existing videos do that. Nevertheless, his prominence as an upper lesser type B narcissist merits occasional consideration of his ongoing behaviours as a working example of an upper lesser type B. Upper lesser narcissists are invariably successful. They may well be charismatic, particularly upper lesser type A. They will have enjoyed success in some shape or form. It might be financial, it might be fame, it could be with regard to being a high achiever in a particular field of operation. It could be all three of those things. Upper lesser type B are defined by the fact that they're belligerent, that they are bombastic, that they are boastful and bragging. They are the best, and they'll tell you as such. You don't want to get in their way, as they could bully you into submission. There's the possibility of use of physical violence, but it's not always present. They may bully in other ways, verbally. They will utilise threat, but tend to act on it reasonably promptly. They are individuals that don't operate with a facade. What you see is what you get. Given the fact that the upper lesser B will have success, usually on a local scale, but can be on a national and international scale, it means that the individual is often seen as quite effective. They cut through the spin. They cut through all of the gloss that might be associated with mid-range and greater narcissists. The narcissist essentially does what it says on the tin, and that can be rather refreshing for certain individuals, the no-nonsense approach, where your views and values accord with that of the upper lesser type B. They can be very much an instrument that you would get behind and support. And that's proven to be the case with Donald Trump, who enjoys a Marmite existence whereby he has a very dedicated level of support amongst certain aspects of the electorate, and whilst there are others who simply cannot stand him. That there are those that believe that he is the victim of a smear campaign by others to try and prevent him getting into the White House, whereas others think that he is an odious individual whose behaviours have resulted in certain collateral consequences, and he's having to deal with that. Witness the various court cases that he's been involved in. Whatever your view about Trump is, what is important not to lose sight of is the fact that he's an excellent example of an upper lesser type B narcissist, and there's much that can be learned from his behaviour. At the moment, he's engaged in the primaries, and he saw off Ron DeSantis, resulting in a climb down by Ron DeSantis, which of course affords control to Donald Trump. He's won again in New Hampshire, but his rival, Nikki Haley, fights on. And the article by David Charter and Hugh Tomlinson in The Times provides us with another opportunity to show aspects of narcissism in action, and also to help you understand why Donald Trump behaves as he does and says the things that he does. Donald Trump launched a vitriolic and menacing attack on Nikki Haley after winning the New Hampshire primary, as the former South Carolina governor vowed to stay in the fight for the Republican presidential nomination. The fact that she has vowed to stay in the fight is a threat to Trump's need for control. Therefore, in order to nullify that threat, his narcissism has selected a vitriolic and menacing attack. No need for polish, no operation of a facade, but straight-talking response from the man who's looking to be president again in 2024. In a rambling 20-minute victory speech to adoring fans, which will provide him with huge amounts of fuel, Trump called his only remaining opponent an imposter smearing, and darkly warned that Haley should be wary of being investigated for 5 reasons. Threat. It was a far cry from the more presidential and magnanimous speech Trump gave after his big win in Iowa last week, when he lavished praise on his bitter rival, Ron DeSantis. Now, why is it that Trump has behaved in different ways with regard to 2 of his rivals? Indeed, of the 2 of them, DeSantis would actually prove to be a more capable and more likely rival than Haley. So why is it that he's gone on the offensive against Haley whilst he lavished praise on Ron DeSantis, who hitherto labelled him Ron DeSanctimonious as his bitter rival? It all is linked to the issue of control. If you didn't know anything about narcissism, you may think it's a bit strange that he's been so kind in a way and magnanimous towards DeSantis after all the things that he said about him, and yet he comes down on Haley even though DeSantis is the bigger threat to him. What's all that about? Well, it's simply this. DeSantis quit the race and endorsed Trump. He therefore demonstrated that he was under control. He no longer poses a threat. He becomes painted white as a consequence of that action, resulting in the response from Donald Trump to treat him in a benign way by praising him. And his response isn't the bullying, the bombastic response you would ordinarily get, but he's actually pleasant about him. Why? Because he's no longer a problem. He's no longer going to stand in the way of Donald Trump. Thus, he gets the praise. Haley, on the other hand, even though she may actually prove to be a lesser threat than DeSantis, has reasserted her desire to fight Trump for the Republican nomination. And therefore, that means that she's a threat to his need for control. Hence, it ignites his fury, resulting in his vitriolic attack upon her. Haley made an impassioned case for remaining in the race despite heading to a double-digit defeat in the second of the 50-state contest, just a week after suggesting that New Hampshire would correct Iowa, where she came third. There was no correction, and it's hard to see how she can survive much longer, especially as this was considered one of her most winnable states, with the traditional participation of its large number of independent voters. Who the hell was that imposter that went up on the stage that went before and claimed victory, Trump said, smearing. She didn't win, she lost. She did very poorly, actually. Well, the results for New Hampshire showed that Trump got 54.8% of the vote and Haley 43.2%, which was at 6:40 a.m. GMT, with 92% of the votes in. So Trump has an 11 percentage point lead, demonstrating that he wins, but it's not the case that she did very poorly. She still got 43% of the vote. If she'd have got 5 or 6% of the vote, that would be deemed to be very poorly. Indeed, the individual that came in third, who polled, I think, only 279 votes in total compared to the thousands that Trump and Haley received, the hundreds of thousands, that's somebody who's done very poorly indeed. And of course, this is the hyperbolic response that you would expect from Donald Trump. He's victorious, crush your opponent, talk about how poorly she did. He added, she's not going to win, but if she did, she would be under investigation by those people in 15 minutes. Triangulation, threat, smearing. I could tell you 5 reasons why already. Not big reasons, little stuff that she doesn't want to talk about. But she will be under investigation in minutes. And so would Ron have been, but he decided to get out. It suggests that Haley has really begun to get under his skin. Well, of course, the fact that she won't back down means that she continues to be a threat to him. That perhaps as much for calling him out on his recent verbal muddles as for extending an expensive contest he wants sewn up as soon as possible so he can focus on other matters, namely 5 active court cases. There were reports of a discussion within the Haley team about whether to drop out of the race as polls closed, and it became clear that there would be no upset. For all that, Haley delivered an upbeat speech worthy of a winner and found a new line of attack that she's likely to hammer home in the 4-week stretch before her home state of South Carolina holds its vote. I've long called for mental competency tests for politicians over 75. Trump claims he'd do better than me in one of those tests. Boast. If he thinks that, he should have no problem standing on a debate stage, Haley said, to roars from the crowd. Trump snubbed all the Republican debates, citing his commanding lead in the race. That shows his haughty, high-handed behaviour. We don't need to have a debate. I'm going to win anyway, so what is there to talk about? And the pointless effort of scrabbling with a crowd of also-rans. Whilst it may be accurate, it again demonstrates his haughtiness and his arrogance. Now he has one clear opponent, and she intends to make him squirm as long as he continues to avoid her. Haley, who served in Trump's administration as ambassador to the United Nations, appeared on stage when just a small percentage of votes had been counted, and she was about 7 points down to claim she had a great night. The reason for her early speech became clear as more votes came in, and Trump's margin of victory crept upwards towards double digits. The history books will record that he became the first non-incumbent to win both the Iowa caucuses and New Hampshire primary, two very different contests that show his grip on the party. That, of course, will satisfy his need for control. But he's effectively running as an incumbent, with huge experience from two previous presidential campaigns, as well as the unprecedented added ingredient of a fan base that believes he is actually the legitimate president. Haley also delivered a line that may come back to haunt Republicans on polling day in the general election in November. The first party that retires its 80-year-old candidate is going to be the party that wins this election. Neither party is going to, it seems, and there is evidence in the New Hampshire exit poll data that points to why this could play more to Biden's advantage in the rematch, that 2/3 of Americans tell pollsters they do not want. The result sets up an anticipated rematch against Joe Biden in November's election. Biden said it was now clear that Trump will be the Republican nominee after the New Hampshire and Iowa results. My message to the country is the stakes could not be higher, Biden wrote in a statement distributed by his campaign. Our democracy, our personal freedoms, from the right to choose to the right to vote, our economy, which has seen the strongest recovery in the world since COVID, all are at stake. The fact is that whilst Biden, Narcissist himself, of course, offers those observations as part of his attempt to nullify the threat to control that Trump presents, Trump continues his inexorable march towards the White House, and the result in New Hampshire and the responses there too provide you with opportunities to understand his narcissism in action. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.